Students, in the first class of our chapter number 6, Tssues, we have discussed about the differentiation depending upon the division of labor in multicellular organisms. Well, if we recap our last class, then we may have an idea that due to the multicellular organization, there is a division of labor. That means the work, the functions of the body will be distributed to the different parts of the body. But how those parts are formed? Those parts are formed with the differentiation. It is already discussed in the last class of this chapter. That differentiation is like this: cell will differentiate into tissues, and tissues will be differentiated into the organs and system. Organ system. This differentiation, depending upon this differentiation, we have seen a major role of the tissues in making the body organization, and that's why we have the topic plant tissues. How these tissues in the plant body distributed to achieve a function, to achieve a special function. You well know that tissue is the group of cells having the similar origin, shape, structure, and those cells which present within the cell together perform a specific job. This is the tissue. Now, what are the different types of tissues, and what are their structure, what are their functions, what are the types of cells which made those tissues? And what are the different types of animal tissues, where they are distributed in the different parts of the body, how they are distributed, what are their locations, what are their functions. All these will be discussed in this topic. The first we have selected the plant tissue topic. But before going into the different types of plant tissue, first we look the classification of plant tissue. And after knowing the different types, when we will study about the classification, that means we will may aware with the different types of tissues which are included in our syllabus. That's why I would like to give you an idea about the classification of the tissue. Plant tissues mainly classified into the two categories. The first one is the meristematic tissue, depending on the type of cell which divide, and the second one, permanent tissue, the type of cell which cannot divide. When the cells divide, that means those tissues are mainly present in the growing, in that part of the plant where there is growing, wherefrom there is a growing take place. And when the part of the plant got matured, they will when achieve maturity, thereafter it takes a permanent structure, a permanent shape, and they will now perform a permanent function, and their cells cannot divide it. In the comparison of the plant animal tissue, we have seen that as the plant fixed at a particular place, they need such type of tissue which give them strength, which give them mechanical support, and that is why most of the plant cells possess such type of cells which are dead. The tissue composed with the dead cell also, and the living cells also, which are mainly present within the region which are the growing parts, like the root tips, like the stem tips, like the leaf base, like the node, like the internode bases. All these things we will discuss, but first now let us look about the classification of the tissue in the plant. Plant tissues and their classification. Plant tissues are divided into two main categories based on the ability of their cells to divide. This is the basis of basic classification of these two, and depending upon the division of the cell or not the division of the cell, it is the two types. Number one, meristematic tissue, where the cells always divide, and the permanent tissue where the cells cannot divide. So, these are the two important category of the plant cell, but it is not the limit, as because there are some more further classification of these two basic tissues of the plant. Let us now see with a chart how those classification. Let us see the classification in the plant tissues. Plant tissues, the two main category. What are those two categories? Number one, meristematic, and number two, permanent. Now, here may you write the cell can divide, cell cannot divide. In a short form, may you write here, cells can divide, cell cannot divide. Now, depending upon the origin, this meristematic region, this meristematic again divided into the three different types, depending on the origin. Depending on the origin, or region where it present, it can divide it into three types. What are those three types? Apical, meristems, or may you write only apical, intercalary, and lateral. So these are the types of meristematic tissue depending on the origin or region where it is present. And now here come this side, permanent, mainly classified into two types: simple and complex. This simple again classified into parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. So these are the types of the simple permanent tissue. The main three types: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. These are the supportive in function. And the complex divided into the two categories. What are those two categories? Those two categories are maybe here may write to you xylem and here phloem. So these are the some different types of tissues. The first two category, that is the meristematic, and the second one is the permanent. Meristematic again divided into the three: the apical, intercalary and the lateral. Permanent divided into the two main types: the simple and the complex. And the simple again further divided into the parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and complex tissue divided into xylem and phloem. There are two different categories of the complex: xylem and phloem. Xylem having the 4 different elements, and it has also the 4 different elements. Out of these 4 elements, majority of the elements are the component parts of the xylem are dead, and majority of the elements of the phloem are composed with the living cells. So these are the some fact. Here also may you see that this parenchyma having the living cells, this is also, but here this sclerenchyma possesses the dead cells. So these are the some basic facts what I give you here, idea about that classification. Now first we will start from this type, that is the the first category of the plant tissue, that is the meristematic tissue. Our lesson will be started from this. Here in this classification, one more point I would like to add, that in case of the simple permanent tissue, the categorization is not only this, as which you have seen here, like the parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Earlier I have told you it is the supportive. The first classification of the simple depending upon the supportive, and the another classification depending on the protection, and that is the protective, and that also has the two different category. Here is no place to write, may I show you here, that is depending upon the, that is known as the protective, that is the epidermis and cork. So, these are the some facts. Once again, may listen carefully. Plant tissues basically classified into two major group type. Number one, meristematic, and number two, permanent, depending upon the cells divide and which cannot divide. So, here the meristematic meristematic tissue now again classified into the three different category. This is the apical, intercalary, lateral, and permanent tissue mainly classified into the two, number one simple and number two complex. Here the simple and complex, here is also some criteria. The cells which composed this type of tissue are similar, and the cells which composed this type of complex permanent tissues are different. And here the simple again depending upon the two basic function in the plant, the function is the supportive function and the function is the protective or protection. So, here on the depending upon the supportive function, the tissue simple permanent divided into the three different types: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and depending on the protection or protective function, it can be divided into epidermis and cork. Here the complex tissue is divided into the xylem and phloem. This complex tissue is mainly related with the function of transportation in the plant body. When there is a transportation in the plant body, transportation system has the two different purpose. Number one, to absorb water, minerals, and transportation of this to the parts of the plant where it utilized. There are two different functions: the water and mineral which are absorbed to be transported in those parts of the plant body where it will be utilized. This is the first purpose, and that will carried out with the help of the network of the xylem tissue in the plant body. And the second important purpose of the transportation system in the plant body is to transport the food materials from the synthesized parts or storage parts to the different parts of the body. and these important functions in the plant body will be carried out by the presence of the phloem tissues. So, these are the some basic facts about the classification of the plant tissue. Now, let us start first type of plant tissue, that is the meristematic tissue. First, here I would like to give you an idea what are the different points depending upon which you can study. Like when we are going to talk about the meristematic tissue, the first point is the location, occurrence, or maybe definition also. When you will write about the meristematic tissue, when you start to write about the meristematic tissue, then you tell that it is a type of tissue where the cells are always divided. So, here is that is the basic definition, and thereafter the second important part after the definition, the location and the occurrence where this type of tissues are present. The second important structure. Structure means, as you well know, that tissue are the clusters of cells. That means what are the types of cells, what are the shape of that cells, what are the structure of those cells which compose this tissue. Everything about the cell and their characteristic features will be accommodated in the structure of that concerned tissue. Now, the third important part, if there are category, if there are types, then may you write the types, or if there is no types, then we will write the function. So, here are three important points: occurrence, structure and function. Depending upon these 3 points, we can make notes in on the different types of plant tissue. So, first we start the meristematic. Now, we are going to start the first basic type of plant tissue, that is the meristematic tissue. It is also known as meristems. This tissue is mainly composed of such type of cells which are immature, which can divide, and the cells are compactly arranged. The cells are living, composed with the living, and usually present in those parts of the plant body where there is a growing region. That is why first when we study about their distribution or their occurrence or their location, then we can write in this way: it is found in the growing regions of a plant. What are the growing regions of the plant? Tips of roots, stems and branches. It is also present between the bark and wood of trees, where it leads to an increase in the diameter of the stem. Here this is the only distribution. Now, after the distribution, we write the structure. First, we may look here the diagram. Shape of the cell may be polygonal, oval, spherical. Depending upon that shape, if we draw a simple diagram of this tissue, just here indicating the wall. There is a prominent nucleus present, prominent nucleus present, prominent nucleus, prominent nucleus, and dense cytoplasm, dense cytoplasm, dense cytoplasm, dense cytoplasm. Dense cytoplasm. So, here are, this is the nucleus, cytoplasm, the cell wall. Here, depending upon this shape of the cell and their arrangement, may you conclude some idea. What are those ideas? Those ideas are the actually structure. Those ideas are the characteristic features. What are those ideas? You have here, may write when you going to start writing the about the structure of meristems. There are several points may you conclude from this diagram. First, we can write here the cell can divide, the first one. Number 2, the cells are living. The cell wall is thin and made up of cellulose, or may you write cellulosic thin cell wall is present. Number 4, prominent nucleus. Cytoplasm is dense. All the cells, there are so many characteristic features. The cells are compactly arranged. There is no intercellular spaces between the two cells. If you draw this type of shape, like this type of cell, polygonal. Here also you may not see the intercellular spaces. Here the nucleus, here the nucleus, here the nucleus, here the nucleus, here the nucleus. So these are the some different shapes. The cells are here, the cells which compose this tissue are compactly arranged. There is no cell intercellular space. The space between the two cells is nil. And similarly, the other characters may you write like there is no vacuoles present, and if there is a vacuole present, the vacuoles are very much smaller. And after, when you will study this from your own textbook, then after its different types, occurrence, functions, at the last paragraph one question has asked from your textbook for you, that why there is no vacuole present. So the answer is that we will discuss in the next class more and more about this one, about its type and about its distribution. And but maybe now I would like to clear that question, that why there is no vacuole. Actually, what is the function of vacuole? Vacuole is present and prominently in the plant cell. Larger vacuoles are present, large vacuoles are present, and those vacuoles having the capability to store the food materials. And within the vacuole there are cell sap present. It is to be thought that the cell sap which are present within the vacuoles may give turgidity and may give rigidity to the cell, and it can create hindrances in dividing the cell. That is why vacuoles are not present. Understand? Vacuoles are not present as because if that vacuole store, there is no need to storage the food materials, as the tissues, the cells are in a growing way and always require food, and they utilize maximum, and that is why there is no need for storage. And if the food will be stored within the vacuole, and the cell sap may creates rigidity or turgidity to the cell, and that may create problem in dividing the cell. That is why the vacuole is absent. So here some brief description I have given about the structure of meristems. In the next class we will study about some more characteristics we will discuss, and also we will discuss about the different types of meristematic tissue and their important functions. The one important function is here that it takes part in the growth of the plant body, in all along the plant body where it is present. Maybe it present in the root tips, stem tips, and the apices of the different parts of the plant, and all those plants are mainly concerned with the growth. That is okay for today's lesson.